Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of the Ducati Scrambler Project. In this episode, we are going to install crash bars, specifically Givi crash bars. But enough with the chit chat, let's get on it. The Givi crash bars seems fairly solid, and I choose specifically the Givi crash bars because they do not interfere with all the other things I'm planning or I already have installed on the bike. When you open the box and you pull out the crash bars, first thing you notice that they're powder coated. The powder coating, it's really good. It's nice and rough. It's not like slick and shiny. But I don't want it slick and shiny. I want to be able them to get a beating without me noticing right off the bat. The installation is pretty much straightforward. There are a few things that I'm gonna have to move off the way from the bike, install the bar and then put back, but it should be short work. When you open the box, you'll see that they come with a few bolts, a few spacers. If you are installing them yourself, do not get discouraged. It's not that difficult. We're gonna go through it together and see how it goes. We're gonna start with the right hand side, just because according to the Givi instructions, which are very poor by the way, the big bolt that goes through the frame and through the engine is coming from the right hand side. So I figure I wanna put the bolt in first and forget about having to lift the engine and everything else. So there are a few tools that you're gonna need at this point, being a 19mm socket, a 15mm socket, 11mm wrench, and then you're gonna need a 6 and an 8 Allen or X keys. Let's also take a look at the parts that you need to install the crash bar on this side. You have the long rod that goes through the frame and the engine. Then you have a washer that goes through the rod, like this. Then you have the long spacer. So you'll put the long spacer inside, you'll put the crash bar, and then you put the big rod through all of it. For the back side, which would be here, you have this that goes straight through the crash bars and straight into the engine with the little spacer on the other side. But at this point, for simplicity of installation, I'm going to remove the brake light sensor or switch over here so I can access the bolt on the other side. Another thing you need to do before you start the whole procedure is grab a little jack and jack up the engine, because this bolt goes across the engine and the frame and holds pretty much the engine in place. Let's start taking off a few things. We're gonna grab our 11mm and we're gonna start undoing the sensor. We'll move it aside, and just so we don't lose the washer in there, we're gonna put it pointing up and out of the way. At this point we have access to the bolt down there, so let's get our I believe 8, yep, our 8mm X key, and let's start undoing that. When you pull this bolt out, there are two things to notice. There is a rubber bushing in there, which stays, and there is a giant washer on the back side that will fall off as soon as you remove this bolt. The washer is gonna go back to its proper place. Next step is to remove the nut inside the frame, which you're gonna need a 15mm socket, which is small enough to fit inside the frame. Once you got it, if the nut just spins around without doing anything, there is an 8mm Allen key on the other side jam one in there and just keep undoing. Here we have it. At this very point, it's important to make sure that the jack actually is sustaining the engine. So we'll crank it up a bit, not too much. And then it's time to push the rod through. How do we do that? We can use actually the provided rod and we can just tap it in. You will feel the rod inside sliding back and make space for the new one. But let's do it with the crash bar in place, which goes in there. Do not forget to put this washer back where it belongs. So on the inside, a few turns just to make sure it doesn't slip out. And now it's time to put the big spacer in there, the big rod through the hole here, and in there. We're just gonna bang it in place. I guess the bolt just fell off the other side. Let's go check. Indeed, this thing fell off from the other side, so put it aside and let's keep banging. So it turns out that this one is supposed to be 36 Newton meters, so let's put it to the proper torque. 36 Newton meters. I wanted to torque that properly because I need to put the brake light sensor back in. Before going any further, let's make sure that the rear tail light still works. And it does, so we can now move on. On this side, there are a few things that we need to do different than the other side. First and foremost, we have different tools we gotta use. On this side, we need a 17 millimeter, a 19 millimeter, and you also need a 4 millimeter X key. So put those on the side. Once we put the crash bar in place, which is just about like this, we also have to attach this left crash bar to the right hand side crash bar via this connector. So we need to do this at the same time as we're putting the crash bar in place. Other than that, the instruction call to remove this linkage over here. Since we're removing that now, there is a nut in the back that needs to be all held. Okay. That's it. This one goes down, this one goes forward. Success! Take our 8 millimeter and let's remove that. This one comes out, let's put it aside. It's time to position the crash bar. So big spacer going in, crash bar in, little spacer going back there, and the bolt going through. I'm gonna actually untie the bolt a few turns so that when I move it doesn't go anywhere. I'm gonna do the same thing up top. I'm gonna put the big washer up here and a few turns of the self-locking nut over there. So at this point we can move forward and attach the two bars together. When you install it, make sure that the wider holes, openings, are forward. It'll make it easier. So we get two O-rings that need to be installed in there. Once you got the O-ring O-rings in place, you can actually slide this in. So one in and number two. Let's see if with the help of a strap I can make this thing do whatever I want it to do. They give you no torque specs for how much you gotta torque those, so tie it until they feel good and the washer doesn't deform. That feels like it's good enough. Let's see if I can push the O-rings on the edges. The two bars are one. I can remove the strap. Moving on, I'm gonna untie the other two bolts, the top bolt as well. Time to apply the right torque to the bolts. 36 Newton meters and 60 for the top bolt. As you're doing this one, remember to hold the one on the other side at the same time. The beauty is that I don't really need to look at the torque because it beeps. So let's put back together the shift link. And this is supposed to be tied to 10 Newton meters. It seems like the bars get in the way on the downshifting. I'm gonna bend it just a little bit because it's literally 1 millimeter. Houston, we have clearance. Another installation is complete. Now, if you are like me, every once in a while you get left with spare parts and a lot of doubts. So to put those doubts to rest, I'm gonna show you the only parts that are supposed to be left out or that you need to be left with. Those two bolts over here coming from the foot peg holder and the frame to engine bolt that goes through it. Those are the only three bolts that you're supposed to be left with. If you're left with more than those, you're missing something. But anyway, so Givi or Givi, if you're Italian, also give you those plates to install on the crash bars. And they're supposed to go here like this, just about. But I don't quite like it. I like the clean look like this, so I'm gonna keep them off of it. And one thing before you actually go ride the bike is to check clearance for all the controls and the engine in general. They seem very solid, they look fairly good, and they cover all the good bits that I want to be protected. So the exhaust on this side and the engine on the other side. The installation was easy but time consuming. There are a few things, it's not just two bolts and you're done. You gotta move aside a few things, but nothing too difficult. Anybody can do this installation in their own garage. As always, for this and all the other parts I used in this video, check the description down below for links. Other than that, for more Scrambler, stay tuned because we have way more parts to install. And if you like the video, if you love the video, make sure to subscribe. Right on, and I'll see you next time.